and welcome to the Path of Most Persistence. This is a place where we hear and share tenacious stories of overcoming obstacles with our partners who dare to share a bit of their own personal paths. We hope that these stories provide inspiration, motivation, and illumination for all those who join us. Today is Monday, November 22nd, 2021, and we are thrilled to have Christopher Page as our guest. Chris Page is a proud Aggie, class of 11, and a Palacios High School teacher, an NPI Workforce Industry Training sponsor, and an NPI Regional Coordinator. He is married to his wife Stephanie Page, class of 07, and has 3 beautiful children, Kendall, Bentley, and Beckett. Chris, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for joining us today. And more importantly, thank you for bringing that small group of your students here to visit campus. And you guys had some tours today, correct?
We did. It was a great opportunity to bring some students and to expose them to Aggie Land. It's a beautiful campus, great environment, and hopefully they will choose to apply and hopefully become Aggies in the future.
Well, I think you might be slightly biased, but we're all in agreement why this is a place to come and to visit and to become an Aggie. And thinking of that, as I look at your resume and I think about your relationship with NPI, as we've worked together, we were just talking, it was 7 years, but it feels like much longer, in a good way, in a good way. But as I look at your resume and all that you've accomplished, your life seems so straightforward. It seems so perfect, Chris. Have you always had been able to make a plan, to stick with it, and just have it happen?
Always been able to make a plan, yes. Stick to it, possibly. Make it happen, not always. I learned very quickly that plans are great, plans are important, but you also have to be adaptable. And you have to sometimes just go with the flow. You can have a perfectly laid out plan and things don't always go the way you think that they should, but everything happens for a reason, and I genuinely believe that.
Yeah, and you're probably thinking of all areas, professionally, personally, academically, since we're here on campus. But to me, and just for the sake of transparency and for those that are listening in, as I mentioned, we've been working together for the last 7 years, and that's because you were one of our WIT sponsors, and you've done an excellent job, Chris. And I know I've told you that privately, that how much we appreciate your work, and not only your work and your commitment to our programs, but the level of which you work. It's always excellent. You're always making the best of all your programs. You have such high expectations, not only for your students, but obviously for yourself and those around you. But you're able to do that in such a way, to me, as an observer and as a fellow educator, that it's contagious. Students around you seem to hang on to your instruction, to your stories, to what you say, and to also be motivated by that. And as an educator, I'm always captivated when anyone, but most definitely educators, can do that, because not everyone can. Most people want to do it. A lot of people work very hard to do that, but not everybody has that ability. So is that something that you've had to work toward? Is it something that comes naturally to you? Are you cognizant of those efforts and always trying to align your goals, your values, and your objectives?
I think it's a combination of everything. My parents raised me to always do my best. And, they weren't looking for perfection, but they wanted me to put forth my best effort. And so I took that mentality and went to school, got my degree, and had a plan, and that plan didn't work out. I actually if you will, fell into the role of a teacher. Mr. Richard Davis, a man that I greatly respect, we were going to church together, and he came up to me mid-August, and he says, "Hey, you're looking for a job, right?" I was like, "Yes, sir." And he was also a fellow wildlife fisheries major, and at the time, that was 2012, Texas Parks and Wildlife wasn't hiring, U.S. Fish and Wildlife wasn't hiring, and I was a wildlife degree major myself. And he's like, "How about you come teach science?" I'm like, "Well, I'll give it a shot." So I gave him my resume and got called in for an interview and went to the interview. Everything went pretty well. And they called me and offered me the job before I had gotten back home. That was on a Thursday, and I had to report to campus on the following Monday for in-service. Now, I think here's the most ironic part of my career choice. I was homeschooled, K through 12. Never stepped foot in a public school. Started going to junior college when I was 15. So that was my first taste of public school, if you will, even though it was college. Yeah. And so I remember that the principal at the time, Miss Sherry Seaman, she was hesitant because of my background. But the interviewing committee looked at her and said, "Hey, give him a chance. School starts in 2 weeks, so we're kind of down to the wire here." And looking back, it was a great decision. And kind of to your question, I'd like to say that part of my ability to talk to students and inspire students does come naturally. But I also think I should give credit where credit is due, and that is to my mentors that were my teaching partners as I was becoming a teacher. And, you know, when I walked into my classroom for the first time, set it up, and my first class was freshmen.
Oh, bless you.
And it was an eye-opening experience.
Yes.
They were, you know, just coming from junior high, and they were still green. They were still trying to figure out what high school's going to be like, and they were all excited, and I was extremely nervous because I didn't know
it was your first
how
year.
To do it.
Yeah, it was.
You know, I didn't go to, quote, teacher school, if you will. And but it felt like a good fit. It was a niche. And you know, I was able to get involved into different programs. I started out as a science teacher. I was teaching integrated physics and chemistry and environmental systems, and being a wildlife major, the environmental systems was right up my alley. So I was talking about ecology and wildlife and ecosystems, and it was, I mean, they could see that I was really passionate about it.
You were in your ecosystem.
And they didn't quite share my passion for it, but it was okay. I think they still had a good time. And then I was able to get involved in the WIT program, and I quickly found out that, you know, this is an extremely important program that these kids can participate in, that right now they don't understand the value of it, but hopefully in the future they would.
Well, let me interrupt you there, because you've already said so many things that I have to pull apart. We're going to put a pause on the topic of WIT, because we're going to come back to that.
Okay.
But I want to go back, all the way back to your mentors. So just for an official shout out, I know you've already mentioned Richard Davis, who I know very well and respect very, very much. But are there any other mentors you just want to acknowledge publicly?
Absolutely. Warren Morris III, great guy. He had a way with teaching kids, and he was an engineer by trade. Came into teaching later on in his career, extremely passionate, and he taught me so many things. I can't even tell you everything that he taught me before he passed away. Miss Cindy Johnson, same way. She could work a chemistry problem like no one's business. And I always thought that it was funny that she still hand wrote her tests, and she didn't really like doing things on the computer, but her methods, they worked.
Yes.
And she was great with the kids. She'd tell stories about how she would bring rattlesnakes into the classroom in glass jars, and she loved teaching AP Bio. Miss Turner, she was my one of my work moms, if you will.
Yes.
She took me under her wing immediately.
Yeah.
And she told me when I started giving her my ideas as a first-year teacher, and she's like, honey, that's great. You'll learn. It's okay. You'll learn. And I was like, I don't know what that means, but okay. But, well, I know what it means now. I learned. Yeah. And then the last one would be Miss Cindy Lavati, she's a computer science teacher. When I came into the science department in 2012, I greatly dropped the average age. There was so many years of experience surrounding me.
Yes.
And all great people, and they've all retired or passed on now. But one of the biggest things was, out of our 5-member team of the science department, 3 of us were Aggies. And so I got to throw that in there. Absolutely. And we had that immediate connection, that immediate bond, and we were unstoppable. We worked great together.
Well, I wanted to give you that opportunity because I know how important it is for educators to be acknowledged, and for their names to be spoken, and especially those that have passed on. I, too, was very, very fortunate to know all of the teachers except for Ms. Lavati. I never had the opportunity to know her or to work with her. But obviously with Mr. Davis, Mr. Morris, Ms. Johnson, and Ms. Turner, those are some that I have always held in the highest regards. And I had the good fortune to work with them when I was principal at the high school. And they taught me so much. And I tried to learn as much from them as I could. But I do want to give a little special love to Ms. Cindy Johnson because I think about her still often, and she was a teacher that I had when I was in junior high. I know she was 10, but at that time, she was one of those teachers that really, I don't know what it was about her. At the time, I didn't know what it was. I did later. But as a young person, she made you feel safe. She made you like to learn. She made you want to learn. And she made it a safe place to learn. So I just wanted to spend a little bit of time on that. But going a little bit further, I think it was delightful and wonderful and sounds exactly on brand for Mr. Davis to approach you at church and to encourage you to apply for a teaching position. I think Mr. Davis would probably say takes one to know one, so he knew what you had to offer. But I am intrigued, and I want to spend a little bit of time of that transition or adjustment that you had to make from having that homeschool experience to all of a sudden leading a classroom of public education, especially freshmen. How do you make that adjustment? Were you able to make that because of all those mentors you had around you, or what was it?
It definitely had a lot to do with my mentors around me. There was times where, every class is different. Every classroom is different. You what works with first period may be an epic fail with 8th period. Yes. And so I remember running across the hall to Mr. Morris, and I was like, Mr. Morris, this isn't working. What am I doing wrong? He's like, well, son, all you got to do is just this, and this. And I was like, oh.
That easy.
Got it.
That easy, right?
Sometimes when, I was getting overwhelmed we co-taught IPC.
Yes.
And so I'd go in his room that morning when he got there, and I was like, all right, Mr. Morris, what are we doing today? And so he'd show me how to do it. I was like, all right, got it. And go back to my classroom and rock and roll with it. But I mean, like I said, having all those years of experience surrounding me was invaluable, because I could go to any of them at any point in time, any point in the day, and just say, hey, I need help. I'm struggling here.
Well, as much as that says something about all of those incredible individuals, that also says something about you, Chris, because you have to be teachable too. You know, we hear that a lot in the classroom. You could be the greatest teacher, but if that student isn't ready to learn, wanting to learn, I think even for the best of educators, it's hard to get through to someone.
Absolutely.
So you had to have been in a place where you were vulnerable, where you were looking for direction, where you too were wanting to learn. And that can be, not saying this was your experience, but that can be humbling too, especially someone as knowledgeable and as intelligent as you, to allow yourself to sit back and take direction. Was that difficult? Or
for me, it wasn't, because I like to think that I'm laid back and easygoing, and I wanted to, I want to do a good job. I want to make a difference. I want the students to learn, and the best way to do that is to, piggyback off of others' experiences.
Yes.
I mean, I was 22 my first year teaching.
Oh my
goodness, I was young. I knew I didn't know it all.
Yes.
And I mean, I've been in the profession now for 10 years, and I still don't know it all. Right. Like I said, every group of students is different, and you just kind of got to find a way to connect with them, and you got to find what works. And sometimes you find a lot of different ways on what doesn't work, but that's part of that adaptability. Yeah. And trying to do the best job that you possibly can do.
I think that's great, and I think that is you taking it on that way and having that type of acceptance is a fine example to your students, because they're basically in that same situation, allowing yourself to be taught, to be open to it, and they probably knew very well that you were a first-year teacher. You probably shared some of your own stories. Did you share with them that you had been homeschooled and this was...
Initially, I did not,
Yes.
But being that I grew up in Matagorda County and some of their older siblings were my age,
Yes.
the word quickly got out.
Yes.
And my environmental science class that was juniors and seniors, and so they quickly interrogated me, if you will.
Yeah, I'm sure.
To get information out of me, but they were okay with it. A lot of their reaction was, "You were homeschooled?" I was like, "Yeah." "Oh, okay." I was like, "Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty normal-ish. I try."
Nice. I want to go to that comment that you made when you were interviewing, and the principal at the time wasn't too sure because of that experience. That makes me think of so many conversations that people have about lots of different topics, but the frustration of being prejudged, because that was your background, or maybe that's your appearance, or because you didn't personally go through something like that you couldn't possibly be able to handle a situation. What does that do for you? And maybe not for you, but what can people learn from going through a situation where they were prejudged and to persist in that opportunity? You obviously persisted and you got the position and you've been outstanding ever since. But when someone is looking at you, and especially a person that is a decision maker, can make or break an opportunity for you, and they're looking at you thinking, you've never had that experience. What could you possibly offer?
Well, unfortunately, getting around that is a challenge, and you can't control other people's actions, and so that's oftentimes the case where you are getting prejudged. But my thing is, go in there and prove it to them. Use your past experiences and show them that you can do the job, that you can do it well, and you're going to put your best foot forward. And going back to what was mentioned earlier, I think a lot of it has to do with your ability to be adaptable, to learn on the fly, to show that you want it.
Yes.
And you have to show that you want it. You can't be lackadaisical about it.
You have to persist.
You have to persist. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And in the world that we live in now, that persistence is key. It is so important, and having that drive and that desire, when I can finally pull that out of a student, and then I can build on it, and I can encourage it. I can help steer them in the direction that they want to go. And it's that's one of the beautiful things about teaching.
And speaking of beautiful, a lovely aspect is you hearing this story coming from you. And I set it up when we first began the conversation that according to your resume, it looks like life has been straightforward. And I did that for a purpose because I know it's not straightforward. People may look at you and think, he's always had it made. He's never had an obstacle. He's never had any real difficulties. But I set that up because I know you have had those obstacles, and I want our audience to not prejudge you or anybody else, because it is so easy to see someone and think, he's had it easy. And I think you're in such a perfect position being an educator in a room full of students where the conversation changes as the wind blows from one direction to another, no doubt. But I love that you can share stories on persistence just like anybody else. And your stories are just as impactful and meaningful and important as anyone else's. So thank you for that.
Yes, ma'am.
And I know, just because I've been working with you for so long, that you're intentional about sharing stories with your students and sharing that level of persistence, hard work, tenacity, getting through the difficult changes and times. And I know your students learn that from you because you have a reputation, sir. And it's a great one. But I want to know, you've mentioned all these mentors before you, and no doubt your parents were part of those mentors as well. But what have you learned from your students? I know we just visited with one of your students a bit ago, but just in general, you can talk about things that are specific or just general about persistence. What have you learned from just observing your students, working with students?
I can say it genuinely that they have taught me more than I've taught them. Sometimes they come up to you struggling, and the things that they go through, the things that they've already had to deal with in their lives, are just it's almost gut wrenching. But they keep going, they keep persisting, and so I piggyback off of that. And there's times where you just gotta sit down and talk things through. There's times where you gotta sit down and just have a good cry. It's needed. And they inspire me as well. And sometimes they get judged, and it's very easy to do. But when you can find that connection with them, just like I've got one particular student in mind right now that he's had a rough life. He's had some issues with the law and things like that, but he doesn't want that to define him, and he understands that. And I ask him, well, what do you want to do? Like, what's your plan after high school? He's like, I don't know. I don't know what I want to do. It's like, well, what do you like about my class? Well, I like to weld. Okay. Let's work on that. Let's choose that. And now that student is planning on going to college for welding. He's already got several $1,000s in scholarships, and it's great because he was able to navigate through that path to get to the place that he's going to end up, and I feel like he's going to be very successful.
That is so powerful. I think unless you've been in the classroom or you've worked with young people just occasionally, or for those that have never had interactions with young people like that, I think that it's wonderful to hear stories from educators, people that do interact with young people, because it is easy to dismiss young people. It's easy to dismiss them because we think, oh, they don't know, they're just, they're selfish, they're only thinking about themselves, they're so immature. But really, they are living their own private, sometimes not so private, world of true challenge. And you're right, some of it is unbearable, but being able to take the time to just listen, first of all, and then digging and find that thread of spark or something just to keep them going, hanging on to the next day, is beautiful. And I know maybe, I don't know, some of our listeners may think they sure are using the word beautiful a lot. And I'm so glad that you use that word. But I use that word because it is intentional. When you work with young people, it is beautiful to see the changes they make, and especially when you see that spark, when they realize something new about themselves, or all of a sudden they have hope. Maybe hope just for that moment or the day, or maybe they just found hope in a new direction. So thank you for sharing that. And I wonder, when you say they've taught you more, what do you do as a professional person to do more when you only have the same amount of time? You have so many classes. You only have this much time for these students. You have your own personal life, your own family. How do you maximize that time? How do you prioritize the things that you do to do more?
Sometimes it's a struggle to balance your work life and your family life, because you see these kids that they need that help, they need that guidance, and so you want to be there for them, but at the same time you see them for 45 minutes a day. But I try to take every opportunity that I can to get my students out of the classroom, to get them exposed to different things, such as the WIT trips, FFA opportunities. And sometimes I just sit them down and I say, look, I registered you for this. I need you to show up at this time on this date because you're going. And they'll be like, well, I don't want to. I was like, well, why? Well, I don't know. I was like, not a good enough answer. You're going. And I have the relationship with the students that they respect that and they do follow through. And 9 times out of 10 afterwards, they're like, I really enjoyed that. I want to do that again.
But not to minimize that. You can do that because it wasn't just because you said. I mean, you say that in a joking manner, but that's over years of consistency, being who you are, being a person of integrity, being of your word. So students not only know that you're a person of your word, but you're a person of character. And when you say something, you mean it. And they can trust you. And if something can't happen, well, you're honest about it. Mm-hmm. So I just want to make sure that the audience understands we're not being flippant about, I told them, because I know what you mean. But I just want to make it clear that as easy as you said that takes years of consistency from you. in your relationship investment to them.
Yes, ma'am.
And you mentioned WIT and FFA, of course, but because you're with NPI today, can you talk a little bit of that investment? And of course, you can always speak to FFA, but can you speak to your effort and your work with WIT and what that program has done and what it's done for you? Or has it all just been a waste of time, Chris?
Oh, absolutely not a waste of time. Honestly, while my parents did a great job in exposing us to opportunities, and we made lots of trips up here to Aggie Land between myself and my 3 siblings to look at different programs, and we toured different programs ourselves, trying to find that niche. But I wish I had the opportunity for WIT when I was in high school, because of everything that I get exposed to. Now, I've been doing WIT for, I think, 7 years now, and a lot of these field trips that myself and my colleague puts together, I learn just as much as the kids do, which is of great benefit to me because I can bring that back to other students. But bringing them to Texas A&M to tour the Nuclear Science Center and Zachary and to Rellis campus and to do all these different things. One of my favorite trips that I've ever taken was to Lockheed Martin in.
And Chris, I don't mean to interrupt you, but before you go into that trip, and it's an excellent one, can you just spend just a little bit of time explaining to our audience what WIT is for those that don't know?
Absolutely.
And then please go back to that trip, because was an excellent trip, I know, but just for the audience. So
WIT is a program that is designed to expose students to potential STEM careers and STEM majors. At my particular campus, we focus on juniors and seniors, and it's not just for 4-year bachelor's degrees. It's also for technical schools and trade schools, and those also have an extremely important part, because not every student needs to go to a 4-year school, and so we want to expose them to just different career opportunities, different ways to achieve their career goals, or to even show them what their career goals could be. The number of times I've heard students say, well, I don't know what I want to do. And I'm like, dude, you're graduating next month. What do you mean you don't know what you want to do? What is your plan? Well, I don't know. And I wish that I could take every single student in Palacios High School through the program, just because it's valuable. And we've gone to WCJC through their Bay City campus, their process technology program, their nuclear technology program, their INC program, Brazosport College, TSTC. Texas State. It gets the students out of the classroom, physically onto the campus, so that they can figure out, is this where I want to spend the next year, 2 years, possibly 4 years of my life, training to become a professional.
Yeah.
And we have all different types of kids in the program. And we do something that benefits every single student. And I tell my students, you might be interested in the medical field. That's awesome. That is an awesome career choice. But still, go to Wharton County Junior College and go through their process tech program. You don't know what might happen, but I can tell you one thing. Even if you go through the program, number one, you're going to learn something. Number two, you might figure out that is the perfect job for you. Or you might figure out that is not what you want to do. And that's just as important as figuring out what you want to do.
Excellent.
And so all the trips, I take as many students as possible, just so that they can have that experience. as I was saying, one of my favorite trips I've ever taken was to Lockheed Martin in Fort Worth. We actually got to go out onto the assembly line. They were making F-35s.
Goodness.
It was just, I can't even describe it. It was so amazing to see a piece of equipment that cost millions of dollars, from the first piece of sheet metal to a finished project that they were doing test flights on. It was amazing to see that technology, and the kids were equally enthralled by it. I tell the kids I learn just as much as y'all do on these trips, because it's, I see so many different things, and it's how technology has progressed even in the last 7 years of when we've been doing this.
Yeah.
Another trip we did was went to Samsung in Austin, where they made the microchips.
Yes.
And the process to make that chip that is in everything, your cell phone, your car, almost any electronic device that has a chip in it nowadays. It was, that's not something that you can learn really from a textbook. You can see the assembly line going on the floor. You can see the automations of the robots that they're using to transport the films and the chips. And it was just incredible. And, these students from Palacios High School, little Palacios, Texas, were able to experience that. But not only do we focus on that STEM aspect, but it gives students an opportunity to see new places, to try new things. We always have a little etiquette class when we go into a restaurant on proper ways to do things, and we talk about how to tip your waitress or your waiter, and how to cross a busy street. All those things that we don't have necessarily access to in our hometown. While our hometown is awesome and amazing in itself,
yes.
You lack some experiences, and so we try to give students that experience and that opportunity.
That is tremendous, and again, the dedication that you and Ms. Busby have made to this organization has been tremendous, and it's clear because it takes a lot of time to organize these visits,
Absolutely.
To plan, to get in contact with the right folks to make it happen. But it's always been very intentional with that program, right?
Yes.
To get students away from campus to touch, feel, see things, ones that, first of all, the school can't or don't have access to. Most definitely, so many of our parents don't have access to take their children to some of these places. But also, it's such a wonderful opportunity for educators because it's continuing education. And I think, I'm so glad you spoke to that, because that has to be exciting for your students to see you get excited about learning something alongside with them. So it's almost as if, not exactly, but y'all are peers in that way, that you're learning this together.
Oh, most definitely.
And I think that's so exciting. And when you talk about those other aspects that aren't highlighted in our brochures, so to speak, or the reports that we report out to folks, are those soft skills, those essential skills that make the difference. If ever they're in an interview that's over lunch, over dinner, that can make the difference between an opportunity and not. But that's not something that's always automatic. We speak to that. We encourage our sponsors to do those types of things. But you've done that consistently over the years. And I appreciate that so much, because if it were not for sponsors like yourself, and now you're a regional coordinator for us that help us shepherd certain areas in the state of Texas, because our programming has grown so much, and you taking on that role has really been instrumental, because it helps us have a person in the area that teachers can really be close to, literally and figuratively. But we learned so much from you all, because we have been doing this for several years now, 13, 14 years. And if it were not for the open conversation and dedication that you all have with us, we couldn't stay on top. We could not make the improvements that need to be made in any program to keep it from being stagnant. So thank you for that. And we need you guys to continue to share those areas of we really need to make improvements here, we need to make adjustments. And that's important for me and the rest of the NPI team to listen so that we do make those adjustments as you all see them. But as we begin to close out, because I know you have a group of students that are probably waiting for you, I just want to know if there's anything in particular you want to mention or talk about before we start to wrap up, because I'd hate to leave this conversation with you feeling that you've left something out.
No, I'm thankful to MPI for them putting together the WIT program that, as you said, have been going on for about 14 years now, and I just encourage any of our listeners, whether you're a student, a parent, a teacher, encourage your students to get involved, to take those experiences, because you're never going to learn. You're never going to figure out if you like it or not until you try. And that's in the times that we live in, that where there's so many possibilities of careers, and college is not always affordable for everybody. There's nothing wrong with going to that trade school. Nothing wrong with getting that associate's degree, because the jobs are there.
And the pay.
And the pay is even better. The pay is even better. I've contemplated going back to school multiple times.
Oh, gosh, Chris. I mean, I want the best for you, but don't leave us. No, I get it. I understand. But on that note, thank you so much. Again, please thank Ms. Busby for traveling up to Aggieland with your group of students, and for taking this time out, showing them about. And we thank you, your time, and please, all the best to your family. I know you spend a lot of time away from them in all your professional endeavors. Thank you. We thank them. But to our guests, please not only listen to this full conversation, share it with your friends and family, and listen to all the other conversations that we have on our path of most persistence. Let's take time to get to know each other, to understand each other, to hear each other, but most importantly, thank an educator, because most of them, more times than not, they're just like Chris Page, doing amazing things every day. Thank you.
Thank you.